Hello. I was talking to a friend at work recently and she was sharing her insights. Actually many of which I'd never thought about before, and they were quite amazing. And I learned a lot from her while she was talking to me about these. One of her insights was really something that sets apart people on a spiritual journey. Sets apart those who are homeless in a bad way, psychologically bad way, to those who are normal, seemingly normal anyway. It's obviously a big variance in the normal spectrum, but then it also sets apart those in the normal spectrum to those enlightened beings on our planet. Really sets up a sliding scale. Homeless people on one end, enlightened beings on the other. Now, what she realized was that people who struggle in this world, in this day and age that we find ourselves in today, are those who tell themselves a story, ultimately an egotistical story. The story is told by their mind. The story is about them as a human being separate from everyone else, and about all the hardships that they're going through, and all the bad things that those other human beings and nature in and of itself is doing to them. So they go over these thoughts in their mind, and they think about them so much that they have no energy to go out and, I guess, pursue positive relationships, which is ultimately where the basis of our life lay, in those relationships with Mother Earth, with other human beings, with the animals, with the empty space around us. These relationships really are at the core of what it is to be human, and this story really sets apart those who are struggling as human beings to those who are not. And it also sets apart those who are amazing human beings from those who are normal human beings. And the reason why it sets them apart is because it really restricts us, this story that we tell ourselves about me, Joshua Hoare, as an individual human being. Because in the mind, we're all separate. The connection which we have as human beings, this is another insight that she shared with me, the connection that we have as human beings comes from our heart. And there is something noticeable, it may not be tangible, but it's noticeable, that connects us, and it comes from our heart. Our mind doesn't see that. Our mind doesn't experience that. And so any stories given to us by our minds create separation. And where there is separation, there is no connection. And whereas there is a lack of connection, there is a lack of empowerment and a lack of love. And so when I listen to myself and my story from my mind about who I am as a human being and how I am separate from others, it really restricts me. It restricts me from being beautiful in the moment. And doing things that are unusual in a beautiful way. Because I say to myself, well, that's not who you are. You're a human being. You can't just stop a conversation and tell someone they're beautiful midstream while they're getting angry at you. You can't accept anger because that's putting you down as a human being, and you can't allow that. You can't stop and say a kind word to someone who's homeless on the street because that's not who you are as a human being. Look at all these other human beings. They're normal and they're just walking past without a care. These stories that we tell ourselves, which seem to be made up of observations we've had throughout our lives about what other human beings do, really restrict us from being what we can be, which is beautiful and amazing. And so the more we listen to our heart and our feelings that we're having at the moment, the less consciousness we can put in our mind, at least initially, that allows our mind to run away with us through telling us stories. The more we can meditate and put our focus on our heart, the more useful our mind becomes. Because when we're in the heart, we're focused in the moment. And our mind is merely there to move our limbs and move our lips and help us with equations, etc., as opposed to constantly going over the past and the future, telling us that story about what's happened in the past and what is going to happen in the future, stopping us from focusing on what's right and what's just in the moment. And I just thought that was such a keen insight. Such a beautiful thing. And when we stop focusing on that monkey mind, when we start focusing in our heart and stop listening to this story that our mind is telling us, we have more energy. We have more energy to do beautiful things. So not only do we do beautiful things, but we have more energy to do them. So everything in our lives, as we take our focus away from that story, becomes more beautiful. Every action becomes less sinful, so to speak, and more beautiful, having a positive effect on all of our relationships. But not only that, we have more energy to perform more of those beautiful actions, because our energy is not being taken up by this story that is being told by our minds. And as our mind relaxes, because our focus is in our heart, we gain an amazing amount of enthusiasm about everything that we're doing. Because everything that we're doing is beautiful and we can feel it, it's just amazing. And I can only hope that some others can feel it too. Thank you for listening.